You want to see something funny? Like not funny haha, but funny what? Watch this. I've made some progress cleaning up the engine, but tonight I've got a part that is going to be kind of fun. I need to get all of the cooling tin ready for paint. And what that means to me is I'm gonna scuff up the paint that's on there so it'll hold some Rust-Oleum paint. But I wanna make sure that I've closed up all of the gaps. I want the tin to fit really well. One of the things that would contribute to low oil pressure is heat, is an insufficient cooling system. We're already in bad shape with this aftermarket blower housing here. So any holes that there are in the tin, like this, right? My oil filler doesn't have the road draft tube, so this is just a big hole. This is the Hoover bit in place, and I found that when the housing is here, there's a gap about as wide as my finger in between this piece and that part of the blower housing. So I want to go through and fix all of that stuff. I'm going to make some repairs. There's some broken spots here. I don't want to weld all that back together. I might add some metal here or whatever I need to do to strengthen that, just to get the cooling tin where it needs to be. That's going to be kind of fun. It's tin bending, right? I'm working on an engine, but doing a little bit of sheet metal work. Going to do some cleanup here and then do a few repairs. We'll see where that takes us. Got a whole bunch of pieces cleaned up. Let's start fixing stuff. So there's something. Now this has something to do with the thermostat flaps. My housing doesn't have a provision for that, so I need to cover this up, and it looks like I got a little crack here. Now there's a few holes that I'm going to plug that I might use in the future. I'm going to plug those holes in a way that'll be easy to undo it, but will be solid enough for the duration of this engine's life. So let's make some patches and weld up some cracks. Get some nuts welded in underneath these holes. So let's see what I can find to put in those spots. I got nothing. I've been looking for the last 30 minutes. I can't find any 6mm nuts anywhere. I don't want this to stop me, so we're gonna do all the other things. What I'm looking at now are cracks and broken pieces. This guy, gonna have to line that up. Ooh, this one's broken too. So let's fix some of that stuff. Most of that went okay. Some of it got a little ugly. Let's see what this looks like on the engine. What'll really matter is what it looks like with everything else. I have a spark plug here that has been cross-threaded. It's not loose, but it is in there crooked, so that doesn't come out right in the middle of the hole. This one I think I can bend a little bit, so let's work on that. It's supposed to. little bit of the gap over here. I think that's a good start, with the exception of all the other pieces that need to connect to it, and still got to weld in some nuts. Let's take a look at the other side. Similar repairs here. Need to make a couple of patches. Let's just start there. Let's see what this looks like on the engine. This is a little rough, it needs to come down some, so we're going to smooth this out on the anvil here. The cooling system audit continues, and I've been playing a little bit with the fan housing. What I've found is it doesn't fit that great. Tell me if you've heard this before. So I've been looking through this housing and I found a few issues. I think right here we're going to do some trimming because it rocks back and forth a little bit on the case. But the big deal is inside here. This little piece here does not reach quite far enough, and I think this little piece here doesn't reach quite far enough either. On top of that, I've got a gap right here that I need to resolve. So to help reveal some of these issues and show me the way, I have what I believe to be a stock housing that I dug up and rinsed the worst of the grime off of it. Let's make a comparison of those spots, especially those ones around the oil cooler. First is this little flap that leads up to the base of the oil cooler. In the stock one, this piece goes all the way over. It's got the little cutout here for the base or the adapter for the oil cooler itself. And that would do a good job, it appears, of making sure that the air goes on through instead of dumping out the bottom of the housing. So I want to make sure that the aftermarket housing I'm using here looks something like this. Looking through the opening here, this piece doesn't make it quite far enough over. So there's a good 1/4 to 1/2 of an inch gap over here in between the end of this piece and the oil cooler itself. So I want to resolve that. I'm going to fabricate some stuff. Also, this cutout is way bigger than it needs to be. It doesn't really need to start until all the way up here, so we might fill this in too. Looking back here at the hoover bit, through that hole that the throttle tube goes, we can see the hoover bit, and when we look over to our left, there's a pretty big gap there. So we're going to modify that and try and close that gap up a little bit. Seems like here is a bit of an issue. This cooling tin is a little short, so I might try and fabricate a piece to come through here and then down. Something that will close up a little bit of this gap. Another issue is I think we need to do some trimming. The housing rocks back and forth on a piece right here behind the generator stand, right about here. And I think when I trim that down, it'll resolve this issue. See, this side is too high. I think this whole thing needs to come down a little bit, and it's that spot that appears to be preventing it. A worthy question at this point is, why do I even bother with this housing? Well, I think it just fits where this engine is in its life cycle. We're just gonna keep it alive. I could just use this housing instead of that one, and it would solve these problems that we're about to spend some time on. But there's a couple of reasons why I'm not gonna do that. The biggest is, the more we get into this engine, the more we see that we're gonna be replacing this engine. And I think that's a better idea than stopping and rebuilding this engine now. The decision's already been made anyway, but even so, I think it would be a mistake because I've got the parts to build one from scratch, and in the meantime, we can run this one, right? So we're just gonna see what we can get out of it. Well, that's what this housing will be for. This will go on the new engine. There's a handful of things that I wanna do differently than the way that this engine is put together. So we'll just start from scratch, but in the meantime, we're gonna see what we can get out of this old housing. And to be honest, this is kind of fun. It's tedious, but it's tin bending and it's welding and it's a little bit of engineering, and it's kind of fun to go through this process. I'd be disappointed if I just spent a lot of money on this and it was brand new, but that's not the case. This is a used engine. Somebody else made this decision, and I'm just being scrappy. That was a good start. I think we're in better shape here. It's not hitting anymore, except that now it's hitting here on that case stud. So I might do a little bit of hammering back here. Over here we're a lot better off. I'm gonna go just a little bit more. You can see we're getting lower, but still not quite low enough. Got a little bit of a gap here. So I'm gonna try and sit this thing down nice and pretty. Now I think we're in better shape. We're sitting down over the lip that's on the case here, but we're not going to cut into the case. We're not sitting on the case stud anymore. We're all the way down. This fastener is going to be right in the middle of its spot. That's cool. We're doing good here, relatively speaking. And that looks good up there. Now with that fitting like we want it to, I think it's a good time to go ahead and figure this out. That's going to be a tiny little sliver of metal, but we'll try it. Let's make a metal one of these. Here's how it fits. or it's supposed to fit, I'm gonna cheat a little bit and sneak this piece behind the tin. I think there'll be room for it back there, and that'll keep me from blowing through all of this when I'm trying to tack weld all of that. This should be pretty easy peasy here. Let's see if we can disprove that. Give it a shot. This is what it looks like behind there. You see that? Kind of hard to see. And maybe there. I'm thinking let's just go for it. Let's just cut this thing and do a butt weld. Let's take a quick look at this to see if it's even close. That's gonna be all right. It's a little tall. I can grind down a little bit up here. I'm gonna go ahead and weld it in right where it is, and then we'll make whatever adjustments necessary. Maybe just a little bit along there. But I'm liking all this over here. That's cool. It's definitely better. We're going through. That's good. Okay, so not bodywork quality and maybe a little overkill for cooling tin. That's a little better. I like it. That's a little bit more what we need right there. Keep that cooling air inside. The damage is probably already done, but I would imagine that some of the possible oil pressure issues this engine has came from running hot. All of these openings in this tin left less cooling air for the engine itself. So we should be better off. This will really be interesting to see if there's an oil pressure issue and what kind of temperatures this thing runs at. Okay, let's deal with this. I'm going to take a measurement and see just how far out we need to go. So I read that as a gap of 1/2 inch. I don't want to fill the entire gap. I just want to get close. Also going to take this opportunity to mark that slot. Let's go to about right there, I guess. Here's that spot on the stock one. So we need a little bit of a lip and then a little slot. I think we can fix both issues with one piece. We'll put it in here right about there. I've scribed a little line here to show me, but really what I think I'd like to do is tack this in from underneath. It's going to be kind of difficult to get in here. I mean, I could put a little tack here, I guess, but I want to do some work underneath before I mess around up here. So if I hold that in place, I think I want to flatten this out so that it reaches straight out, and then I can tack underneath and then up here as well. That'll hold the thing in place, but if I can clean off enough paint, I'll go ahead and tack on the other side too. That ought to work well. I'll tack it in one spot and then we'll check. I think I like that. That'll work a lot better than what we had before. We're gonna make a nice piece of cooling tin out of this yet. I'm satisfied with that. I think that'll be better than what was in it. So cool, now we need to do a similar looking flap at the Hoover bit, but this isn't gonna be a rinse and repeat. This one's a little different. It has a gap like the last one, but that gap is really wide on this end, but it gets skinnier deeper in there to where it's almost not an issue. I think the piece, the little metal piece that is in there, is the right size. It's just installed crooked. So let's take a look and see if we can straighten this thing out. So this is the piece in question here, and you can kind of make out that it goes this way. It's even more pronounced when we look at it this way. So here's our surface that we want to be perpendicular against, and you can see it's like this, and there's a spot weld right here. Can't get my finger through there, but it's right it's right below my finger. So if I can take that spot weld out, it'll probably reach, but we'll see if we can get it like we like it and then tack weld it back in place. May not need to make anything here. We're gonna try that. Okay, that got it loose. It is too low, but I think I'm on the right track. We still see quite a gap, but it's a lot more even, and now I'm starting to feel like I'm gonna have to add a piece. That's a big gap. I'm gonna go a different direction with this. We're gonna make some pretty drastic changes. Let's just take that piece out. Only got a couple of spot welds here. Now this piece is too short, but what I like about it is this part, so it'll make a good pattern. And we'll end up with a piece that probably comes out to here. I think we can fit a longer one of these on there. Yeah, so yeah, we'll be able to cut out of here. I forgot the flap. So my template is missing a little bit of space. Starting right about here. This needs to get wider by about that much. Let's try that. The idea is to tack it somewhere that I could easily untack it if necessary. So this is looking much better. There's a gap on this end and no gap on the other end. So I'm going to move this part this way a little bit, and then I think I'll be ready to tack it in. Stay in place, please. I'm going to go pretty hot because I got to melt the metal underneath. Okay, this is what we're looking for. No gap. That's pretty cool. We've got both pieces welded in now. No gap at all the way back. And this piece comes all the way up here to push all the air all the way up into the cooler. If we follow this line over, we can see that's where the actual fins are for the cooler, here and above. So all that air is going to be pushed all the way up there. Now this Hoover bit, one of the important things that it does is it gives us a place to bolt this down, and that'll keep this side up against the cooler along with a seal that goes here to keep the air going through here, which is obviously more restrictive than coming out a gap over here, right? We're going to close that gap by bolting everything up. So I think we're in much better shape now. One more thing I want to do here and here. I wanted square nuts, but I found some 6mm regular ones. My buddies over at Triangle Auto Parts had those in stock. I picked them up while I was there. Let's go ahead and weld a couple of those in. Generator. Stuff that goes on the generator. I think I've got the stuff. I've got the stuff. So this obviously is the fan, and it goes on like this. Keep that in mind. Now this whole thing goes into the housing like this. Why like this instead of like this or this or this or this? Because of that. This is part of the airflow. So what I'm able to find in books and online and all that kind of thing is that it's very important that this hole in the adapter, or whatever this is called for the generator, goes down. Here is one in the stock housing. There's the opening, and that's how it would go down. To make space for air to travel through this opening, this stock housing has a little cutout here. There's a little bit of an edge there, and then it stops right here, and it's just nothing. And then it starts again here, and that little edge lines up with that little opening. So here's the funny what thing. On this housing, there is no little opening. This housing does not include that cutout. at all. So when we put the little dilly-doo in here, it's blocked. There's no way air is going to pass through that. So what does that mean? This thing has had a hard life. This is the generator that came off of this engine. I'm thinking next time I order stuff, I might throw in a pair of bearings. They're just a few bucks each. There's one that goes here and the one that goes back there behind all of that, just in case. So we got to modify that housing. We got to put that space, or cut out a space in that housing to allow the air to flow out of that little gap. Otherwise, we're going to continue killing this generator, and I don't see the point in that. So let's cut this thing up. Here's the part that I'm not sure about, and I'd like to hear from anybody who knows about high pressure, low pressure, airflow, that kind of thing. What I have not been able to find is an obvious thing that would cause the air to pass through this path. Unlike other pulleys that we see on alternators, there are no fins back here. So there is nothing here that would cause air to be pushed through these openings here. All right, now there's covers that go here to help this airflow scheme. So air is supposed to go in there, is what I assume, and come out right here. And then it's trapped inside here, right? The air coming out of these blades and rushing past this opening here creates a low pressure in this area that sucks air, like a siphoning effect. So that's what I'm guessing, is that the flow of air coming out of this fan sucks air through the generator, which presumably doesn't need a whole ton of cooling. So if anybody knows for sure, let me know. Let's modify our housing so that it looks like a real one and allow air to pass through this opening here. And then we'll move on to something else. There's plenty more to do. No blockage this time. I'll take it. Looks like that could come out a little bit. There we go. Tight fit is what we need. Okay, I think we're in good shape. No rubbing. Cool. Little bit of a gap here. And maybe we'll tack something on here. This turned out well. Making progress. plot thickens. I need to work on this one and the ones that attach to it. This is the stuff that takes the air out of the oil cooler and directs it through this hole and outside of the engine compartment. It's got some pretty big problems. It would bolt in about right here, but it's supposed to be all the way up here. That's a huge gap. This engine's life has been severely shortened by too many holes in the cooling tin. So it's pretty cool to go through and shore all those up, but they are numerous. There's a lot of problems here. So we're going to keep solving them. To figure these pieces out, I'm going to have to be able to fit this onto the engine, and I cannot do that as long as the engine is on the stand. The stand is in the way, and I checked another stand, not this Fabricated homebrew dilly-doo, but a real engine stand, and it had the same problem. Not as severe, but had the same problem. So it has to be sitting on something. And so that'll allow us to get this thing all straightened out and know exactly how these pieces are going to go on, make whatever mods that we need, and solve the problem. I've got this perfect little table for it. No telling how old this thing is, but this is going to slide right under there and be just perfect. So I'm going to use that to sit the engine on. I've been taking a look at this piece. When it's in its mounting spot, we've got a big issue over here. Got this big gap. Looking at it a little bit closer, it kind of looks like it's crooked. In fact, if this mounting hole were more like right there, look at what happens. Everything lines up nice. I don't think I need to attack any metal on here. Kind of hate to do this because I think this is stock tin here. But I think I'm going to modify it. Between the two things, it'd be easier to move the mounting hole on this piece than on the housing. And I think without being too terribly invasive, I could get this washer tacked into the situation in such a way that it would give me a hole to put the screw through without having to do major surgery on this housing here. There's the whole story. It's bent down this way. We want it to come up this way, so no problem. Okay, marginal progress. This part is sitting how it's supposed to. Now we need to work on this part. This is okay down here. I'd like this to be more of a corner. While I'm at it, I'd like this to be more of a corner too. That was a lot more work than I expected. The engine will be glad we did it when it's pushing this heavy bus around in the summer heat. That day is coming soon after we get in a little more trouble with the intake manifold. Check out the next video to see what we do about the heat riser situation. I'm pretty sure it won't be any more conventional than what we did today. Try to think of someone who would like this video and then send it their way. Sharing is a great way to support Haptic Garage and promote what we do as automotive hobbyists. I hope you find some time for your project, and I wish you the best of luck in getting it done. Until then, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.